Welcome to Scale Your Empire, the podcast that elevates your business game. Meet your guides to greatness. Your hosts, Darshan and Rejin.
Hi, thanks so much for tuning into Scale Your Empire podcast. So right now I have an amazing person, Gerard Murtagh, with us. And Gerard has been a serial entrepreneur from a long time. He started his first business at the age of 17. And within 2 years' time, Gerard was able to qualify for Entrepreneurs Organization. And from that time, he's been the youngest, also the longest serving member in Entrepreneurs Organization. Currently, Gerard runs one of the largest mold removal company in Australia, employing close to over 100 staff. And he's been able to grow his business consistently over 60%. And in 2022, he was able to grow his business for almost 300%. That's a massive, massive growth rate, Gerard. Yeah, and Gerard also has won a lot of awards in Entrepreneurs Organization. And he was also a finalist in Telstra Business Awards. Added to this, Gerard has been featured in Channel 7, Channel 9, ABC News as well. So Gerard, welcome to Scale Your Empire podcast.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming on, mate. What a story, mate. What a journey.
It's been 20 years now, or over 20 years of owning businesses, and I'm definitely still in the weeds of it all. And I absolutely love it. So it's what I wake up for. I love building businesses. I'm constantly looking at ways to improve them and scale them, and that's just how my brain works. So I love every bit of it.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's so good to just hear your story, Gerard. It just pumps me up. Just hearing that accolades, the achievements and everything. But how was your journey when you first began? All right. What were some of the struggles, the challenge that you were facing when you first started your business?
Well, I had no idea what I was doing. That's like when I think about my early 20s and the mistakes that I made and the lessons that I learnt during that period, I constantly was, failing after failure after failure. And I'm sure that there was a few people close to me that were like, mate, you should just go get a job. But fortunately for me, my neurodiversity and the way that my brain is made up just meant that being an entrepreneur and being a business owner was sort of my only calling, and I just absolutely loved every day of it. I wasn't sort of worried about the money or how much money we were making or what we were doing. It was like, as long as we were doing something and it was productive, then we'll work it out over time. And it's funny how those compounding of those lessons just enabled me to constantly grow. And then before you know it, on the macro, you're like, wow, look at that story, and it's so much bigger. But in the micro, when you're in it every day, yes, it can feel like just living in hell. Yeah. But at the same time, I absolutely love it. And it's just always, the world is always evolving. There was, in the early 2000s, we had, when I was starting my businesses, we had the internet was just starting and web pages and all these sorts of things. And now, fast forward 20 years later, and we're dealing with AI. And to me personally, we can talk about that forever.
Yeah, I'd love to touch on that, actually. I remember you mentioning that the other day. Yeah. But before, I just want to quickly touch on it, right? You actually, before you started really scaling, you went from, 60% to like 300% crazy. But I'm sure there was days like 10, 15 years ago when you were just getting started. What made you realize that, I need to scale from here on to the next level? And what was that thing which flicked the switch from maybe like a one-man army to scaling businesses?
Yeah, so when I look back on my early 20s, I was very, very attracted to shiny balls. I would look over there, we could do this, or we could do this, or we could go over here, we could go here, and we could do this. And I was constantly starting another business here and another business. And I can tell you my accountant was just pulling his hair. It's like, another bloody business. When are you just going to just stick with one or get one of them going? And I really, I look back on that time, a lot of forgiveness for myself being a young man and just sort of not having that guidance either. There was always the ability to start a business and then being able to commercialize it. Some things got off the ground, some things didn't. So it got to a point where about 2015 maybe, so 10 years sort of bouncing around and starting businesses and failing and being successful over here and selling this one and doing all different types of things. I realized that if I just focus and I really start to apply myself, that there is actually a really good business here, and I don't need 1,000 businesses. I just need one that's really, really good. And that those moments only come sort of through reflection. And the reflection was, hey, I've got an amazing business here, and I just need to give it the time that it needs and the energy instead of worrying about that next big thing. And I guess that comes with maturity. It came with guidance from EO and a few other people that just enabled me to go, okay, I can do this, and this is a great business. And when I look back on that period where it was about 2015 when we started to scale at about 60% every year on year. And that was only because we just had this focus on how do we make MouldMen the best business that we can? How can we make sure that every part of our process is constantly being perfected? And how do I create a culture where people want to come to a mold removal company, but are attracted to come to a mold removal company because of the culture and because of what we're doing and because of the opportunity that we were able to present to them.
Amazing story. We would love to touch on culture because we're going to do a lot of questions on that for you because we know that you're big on that. But just before that, what any big mistakes you made in the beginning where when you look back at it and you go to yourself, man, I should have done it differently?
So the biggest mistakes that I faced during all of this was taking my eye off the ball, especially in the early days, taking my eye off the ball of what we were trying to do. Could we go, then there'd be another opportunity where we could go into another market and we could go over here, we could expand somewhere else, we could add another service offering. And it's one of those mistakes when we were with MouldMen was we wanted to do everything that needed to do to solve the mold inside your house. So air conditioning systems, ventilation, plumbing issues. So I had all these great tradies and the revenue was going up, but what was happening is I wasn't making any money because I was supplying all these guys and girls with work, but I wasn't making any money and they're hassling me to get paid, and then I'm having to chase the client to get paid. And what happened was I took my eye off what we actually were really, really good at, and that was removing mold. We weren't the best. I wasn't an electrician. I wasn't a plumber. I had to trust that the people I was employing could do the job, but they did the job and they wanted to get paid immediately. And then I was like trying to chase money, and it just became I was a facilitator of all these other businesses. And that was one of the first major lessons is focus on what you're really, really good at. Like that, if you really nail something, then just do that really, really well. And, I love a sporting analogy, and anybody that knows me knows that I usually talk in sporting analogies, but it's sort of like if you think about an NFL football team, you have people doing specific roles. Your quarterback doesn't go on for defense.
Yes.
He's there to get the ball and throw it and to manage the team. He's not there to do any of the tackling or to impose himself in any other way. And it's sometimes the same with business. You've really just got to be focused on what you're good at and then just rinse and repeat that. And then until you find another opportunity within your business to continually grow or to perfect that product or that offering that you're doing. I think, especially in my early days, I just got so distracted with all these different opportunities that I could be doing, and I could be going over here and I could be going over there. And in the end, it actually cost me a lot of money and a lot of time because my focus wasn't where it needed to be.
Wow. That's a really important thing that you touched on, Gerard, because when you're an entrepreneur, everything looks like an opportunity. Okay, everything is $1 million business. And when you start or when you're scaling as well, you're like, oh, I can see money here, I can see money there, I can see opportunity there. But what made you say no to a lot of things?
All the losses of having not enough time in the day. Like we call them losses, you can call them learnings. I prefer to use learnings, but really I've learned so much because I've failed so much. Like I am a world champion failer. I have done so well at failing that it's only now that I can look back at like the macro of it all and go, oh, that's actually what I should have been doing back then. But again, that's where the forgiveness piece comes in, because I've got to forgive myself for not knowing the things I didn't know.
Yes.
But what I do have to do now is throw myself into those learnings. So you're either, I learn from my lessons. I have a feedback loop process of all of my failures and what I would have done differently. I don't beat myself up on them. I appreciate my wins, but the wins come and go, and then you're just straight back at it. I could imagine if I was an athlete that I'd be, there'd be a bit of a party, and then I'd be straight back at it the next day trying to work out how I can not drop the ball or fail again. But I'm okay I love failure. I think failure is the best way we learn. I think that if you're not failing, you're not really going hard enough, you're not trying enough things. Obviously, you've got to have enough money in the bank sometimes to have some of those failures.
Yeah.
But sometimes failures can be just as little as how you write an email to, or what how you handle a different situation, or how you put your time into something. And it's about learning from that. And as soon as you get to the point where you're like, okay, I didn't go as planned, we'll learn, we move forward. And I don't beat myself up over it. I don't let anybody else really beat me up over it. I say, I go, yep, I could have done that better. You're 100% right. But then I just move forward. And it's the only way to truly stay sane as a business owner is not to get down on the losses and not to get down on the things that you haven't gone well. And because 99 times out of 100 in my life, nothing really happened the way that we planned it to happen. Some things, something's it's much better than what we expected, but there's a lot of things that you don't hit those numbers that you thought you were going to, or that people didn't react to that email, or whatever it was that you were trying to do. But the thing is you learn from it. You wake up the next day and just go again. And that's sort of...
I was going to touch on one of the things you mentioned before, right? You mentioned that what you mentioned was very typical in the building sector. Like you're literally like an orchestrator. So you got a million contractors, you're in the middle trying to do everything. And it's not at the end of the day a business. You're literally like a middleman contracting. So how did you go from that scenario to actually building a brand, which is actual business, which is a MouldMen?
So instead of worrying about having this massive business that looks after everything that you need when it comes to mold, like I said, like from air conditioning to ventilation to all these different things, plumbing issues, repainting walls, replastering, all of those sorts of things, I realized that I'm just really good at removing mold, and I can control that. I can employ somebody to remove mold the way that I want them to remove it.
Focus on one thing.
Focus on the one thing. And in the end, I can facilitate, deal with this plumber, deal with this electrician, deal over here. But the reality is I wasn't making any money on any of those sorts of trades. And then somebody'd ring me and go, hey, my plumber can do it for $50 less than you can do it. I'm like, well, I've got to make some money to facilitate my plumber turning up. Yeah. So that was the reason. And then when I wasn't worrying about facilitating everybody else's trades, I got to then work on my team. I got to work on the culture. I got to work on the branding. I got to work on all these things that have actually enabled us to scale. But if I was still trying to be the everything man to everyone, then I just wouldn't have got out of first gear. And I think that's, at the moment, I see a lot of businesses right now that, you want to buy a steak, but they're going to give you a cow. And you've got to try and work out like what it is that you need. And you're like, hang on a minute, I just wanted a steak. Like, well, you got to buy the cow. Yeah. And you're like, okay, well, what am I going to do with the hide? What am I going to do with this? What am I going to do with that? And then you're just left with this mess that's really bloody expensive.
Yes.
And instead of just getting what you need. And that's when it comes to MouldMen, we were able to focus a lot of our energy on what we do well. So now we own our own chemicals. We own our own rags, our pads, our poles, anything that goes inside the van, we pretty much import or buy in bulk. So we don't have any constraints around raw material or supplies or anything like that, because I wanted to be in control of what I was using inside people's houses to remove the mold. I also wanted to be in control of what sort of materials we were using, because what you can buy from Bunnings today, you might not be able to buy from Bunnings tomorrow. And so by dealing with even down to the microfiber pads that we use, to how much foam's in them, we've researched all of that. I was able to do all that research because of the fact that I wasn't trying to service everything to everyone. I was just focused on removing mold, go in, do it well, get out, rinse and repeat.
Wow, the power of focusing on just one thing, hey? Everything comes together.
Yeah, if you look, I look to sport a lot for inspiration, and it's a bit of an outlet for me when I see high performers and how they set themselves apart from the competition. And the reality is that all of these people really just focus on what they're doing. And businesses, it is difficult because there is so many moving parts going on. But the reality is if you get rid of all that noise and you just focus on what you can control and what you're trying to do, and you're not trying to compete with what's going on with the guy down the road, and you don't you got to be competitor aware, but don't be competitor reactive. You don't want to react to your competitor because he or she's just brought out a new thing. It's like, well, congratulations, I hope it goes well for them. But the reality is we know where we make our money, and we do it really well here. So that's how we've been able to differentiate everything compared to our competitors because I'm not worried about what they're doing. They can copy us, but we're not worrying about what they're doing. And when you look at a sporting team, they're able to train and specifically lock in on different parts. If you're a basketballer or a baseball, NRL, you're really focused in on what your task is at hand. Yes. And then, you go back, you pick up your phone, you get on with it. But, for instance, the other night I was at that Tom Brady event in Brisbane and he said something that was really interesting. It's like he wasn't worried. He was able to focus on what he was focused on in the weight room, in the training paddock, or then on the pitch during the game. Now, it's a lot easier when you've got a 300-pound bloke trying to rip your head off. You're not worried about who's bringing you. You've got to get back to that text message. What's happening with the kids? Are the kids happy? Are they up there in the box, being fed? Are they behaving? No, because he's got a 300-pound man chasing him and 10 million people watching at home. He can be really locked in. Yeah. But again, as entrepreneurs, we've got to have that mindset as well. Like the 300-kilo man or 300-pound man coming at you to rip your head off is usually the ATO. It's your suppliers. It's the credit card companies. It's everything else.
Definitely the ATO.
Yeah. But those big beasts. But you sort of you've got to hype yourself up like you're in the game, and that means leaving. If it means leaving your phone away, if it means shutting down the computer with your email, so you can just lock in on what you're doing. And I'm no master of this. Like I'm still a student of the game. I'm still trying to learn every single day as to how I can lock in better, so that I reduce all those distractions, so that when I'm there, I'm working on what I need to work on, and then I'm out. And that's a big focus on what I'm learning in like 2024. Like right now is limit the distractions, focus, because success is from the neck up. Like it's got nothing to do with anything other. You've got to be successful in your head. And the only way to really be successful is to get those runs on the board, to do the work, and to be confident in what you're doing. And the only way to really do that is to have focus.
Yeah, focus is so crucial, right? Especially when we know that we are getting distracted in so many ways. Yeah. It's unbelievable. Gerard, 300% growth, which is phenomenal. That clearly says that you're exceptional in marketing, okay? So tell us a bit more, like, when you're trying to scale such high limits, what was your marketing strategy? How do you make sure that MouldMen became a brand?
We're a weather business, so we respond to weather. And we had in 2020, 2021, 22, we really had a lot of rain. So we had a couple of really good years that sort of helped our cash flow and our cash position. We were primed for growth. So the marketing strategy wasn't as genius as what you potentially would. You think that I've got some special sauce. The special sauce was during these wet weather periods is being able to educate people. I don't go out there usually and sell things like, you need to buy us, you need to buy us, you need to buy us. It's like, you already know you've got mold. You just need to find somebody that you trust, because people do business with people that they like or who they trust. So if we send somebody into your house to give you a quote and you can trust what they're saying and you feel comfortable with them, then we're halfway there to getting the job. And so for me personally, it was about putting myself in front of the news and saying, okay, we've just had a flood. Now, if you've got mold, this is what you need to do. Now, and I just go through all the pieces of why you need to wear PPE gear. Like every time there's a flood, you see these kids running around in the mud and I'm like, they're just full of pathogens, usually feces and dead animals, and people like putting it on their face like war paint. And I'm like, it ain't war paint. So I would use that time to educate the market about, okay, wear your PPE gear, make sure you're protecting yourself, make sure that you're doing all of these things correctly. That was our marketing strategy, is just educate. And MouldMen has been an education business since we started. It's not about buy, because I trust that you're a smart person. And if we come to you and we give you all the answers, so why have I got mold? This is why. How do I get rid of it? This is how you get rid of it. What can I do to prevent it? This is what you do. I'm not selling you anything. You're a smart person. You'll make a decision on who you want to go with. And if you want to go with someone else, then great. Or if you want to go with MouldMen, then great.
Yeah.
But my job is that if I've left that interaction and you've got comfort that, you know what, I'm not going to die. Yes. This is not the end of the world. I can get it resolved. And our job is to calm that situation through knowledge. So that was our marketing strategy.
That's a really crucial aspect that you mentioned, the education-based marketing aspect, because most businesses are just trying to pitch, trying to sell people, whereas when you come across as a trusted authority and you try to educate people, the trust level goes up so high. and the credibility of the brand improves so much.
Well, the thing is, like, you think about anybody that you learn from, you trust. So if you read a book and you learn something, you turn around and go, wow, I really want to meet that person. Why? Because they've taught you something, and once you've expanded your mind, it can never retract. Like, that's the greatest thing about learning, is that you keep learning and you keep getting smarter, you keep getting wisdom, you keep experiencing different things. And so that's why constantly giving people the information that they desire and that they need, and not fearing them. Like, don't be a fear factor. Don't be like, oh well, if you don't get rid of this mold, then you're going to die, or you're going to, well, this is going to be really terrible for your kids. Yeah, don't worry, mold makes you sick. Yeah. But let's just calm down. Let's give you all the information. You can make a good decision. You're a smart person. This is your home. I'm not here to come in and tell you what to do. I'm going to tell you all your options, and then you're going to tell me what you want to do, and we'll work this out together. So that's why educating people builds that trust, because we naturally are attracted to people that we learn from, that we admire, and it's usually because you learned something. And you think about our interactions many years ago. I've still got the text message that you sent me when we started that mentoring program. Yeah. You sent me some amazing messages of what you were learning, and that obviously builds trust. And the more you learn, the further we can go.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, one of the things obviously we want to touch on is the culture part, right? I know that it's not easy to build a team with 10 people, let alone 100 people. So there should be a lot of rules around procedures, and also building culture where people would love to come to work. We want them to be happy to come to work. We want them to be happy while they're at work, and they're happy to go home in the evening as well, right? First of all, how did you start thinking about culture? And what do you do to make sure you are the best place to work?
When you think about like mold removal, you don't sort of think about this sexy brand like High Smile or Nike or working for a company that Village Roadshow or one of these other big brands that we've got here on the Gold Coast, Pacific Fair, or being a town, so like I've got this really good job and I'm working for this brand, and I'm really important, and people don't wake up every in the morning and go, hey, I want to go work for a mold company. Like they usually see the ad and be like, that's might be interesting, maybe I'll have a look at it and I'll just put my resume in. So in the early days, it was about, okay, I'd hear that many times, I never even realized what a mold company was, but I needed a job, so I thought I'd come. Now it's a little bit more of, as soon as we put an ad up, we get maybe 500 or 600 applicants because people recognize the brand and they want to apply. A culture, I haven't got it right. I haven't always got it right. Do I want to get it right? Do I strive to get it right? 100%. But during the scaling, that's when culture was the hardest part of the scaling. All of the scaling was not the cash flow. It wasn't like getting vans. It wasn't getting, supply, like getting chemicals or suppliers or rags or any of that stuff. It was actually the culture of the business that dramatically changed in that period, because we did 300% growth in 12 months, but we did 100% growth in 8 weeks. Wow. And that period of time was, so exciting and so crazy, and everything you could ever think about, like of a really, really exciting time. But it came with a lot of risk, and it came with a lot of problems, and we didn't know those problems until the problems started to boil to the surface, and that was, and a lot of that came back to the culture of the business, because people came to our business, they saw this amazing business growing, everybody was happy, we were, the opportunity was endless. We went to Sydney and Melbourne. We launched in Sydney and Melbourne in the same year. We were employing like 8 people a week at some point, and our payroll's going through the roof. Our revenue was revenue doubled in 8 weeks. Wow. And that was, I think about that time, but the risk and what happened was that the culture completely changed. And that was because we sort of added 40 people in a matter of months, and they brought their own culture. Yes. And what did they see? They saw a business, heaps of money going through the door, lots of opportunity, people doing overtime, things are going on. And then before you know it, they're like, they won't miss this. They won't miss that. And when I could eyeball everybody that had access to my credit card, by like the middle of the year, I didn't know who had access to my credit card at some point. But I had 2 accountants. I had a bookkeeper, I had a head of HR, I had marketing, I had sales, I had operations, I had field operations. And they all sort of had access. Oh, I need to buy this, I need to buy that. And the credit control that we had, I really, really messed that up. And people just took advantage of it. And that's where it's taken over a year to sort of rinse those people out of our business and get back to the company that we had before, or the culture we had before the massive growth. Now, we have obviously employed more people, but we've been really focused on like the things that we got wrong. So credit control, the misappropriation of funds, like people were changing salaries in Xero and giving people pay rises without me being notified, and and when you're running out in front and you're being on news and you're doing all these things, I was in Sydney, I was in Melbourne, I was doing all these things, trusting that, hey, with 2 accountants, a bookkeeper, and a whole bunch of senior leadership, I'm solid. Like I can trust these people. Well, at the start of the year I could, because I could eyeball all the people that had access to those different functions of the business. And then because I transferred that trust onto brand new people that I'd met for maybe 1 to 2 hours and in an interview, and then they get given the job and they're like, I can pretty much do what I want here. And they've given me the keys. And unfortunately, people sometimes can't help themselves. And that became a massive problem. And, it ended up being nearly a $600,000 lesson.
Wow.
Because when we did a big audit of credit cards, wages, overtime, we found a lot of misappropriation.
So there's a lot of lessons of scaling, I guess, as you mentioned.
Yeah, like I said, we could talk for hours about that lesson.
And do you mind if I ask you though, but now now that you learned that part, I'm sure the audience would love to hear this part as well. Since then, what you've done in the last 6 to 12 months to make sure that it doesn't never happen again?
Yeah, so we graded all of our team. So we went through and graded them all. We also did some personality tests and realized some of these people you don't want to be in business with. Yes. So we were able to exit them from the business. We also realized that during this period as well, when you're scaling, and this is one of the lessons that I learned from one of my mentors early on, is that when you've got a business, it doesn't matter. I'll just use a scale of 1 to 100, let's just say, and it doesn't mean millions. It doesn't mean anything. It's just a scale. But people get on when you start a business and you're at 0, and then you might bootleg it into 2. Let's just call it 2, whatever 2 is. And so you employ somebody, and then you employ another person, and then you might go to 4, and then you employ a couple more people, and next thing you know, you've gone from 4 to 8. Yes. Now that people that's got on the business at 2, and now it's 8, they are it's a different role.
Yes.
But I had this fantasy in my head that we were going to grow a business together. But a business that's at 8 is very much different to a business that's at 2. And if we're going to 16, because I'm an entrepreneur, I want to keep scaling and I want to keep growing. There's a lot of people that were like, hey, when I was here, this was easy. And now it's 16. And I'm not saying you need to work 8 times harder, but it's a different business. Sure. And what I found is that people are like, I want to hold on to my job, so I've got to make sure that I sort of slow this down, or I protect my position, and then that stops the growth. But it's all because they don't have the faith in themselves, or they don't have the skill. And a lot of times I had a lot more faith in them than they had in themselves. I was like, you can do this. You've just got to learn how to run at this level. And that lesson that I got taught all those years ago was that, Gerard, as people push your business from different stages, but they're not going to be able to push it any further. And you need to make a decision if you need to put them into a new role or replace them. And that's a really hard conversation with somebody that helped you get from 0 to 8. And now you're saying to them, I don't think you're up to taking us to 16. And they look at you like, yeah, but I've put all this effort in. I'm like, yep, and you've been paid every week. Yes. And we really appreciate you, but we want to keep going, and we need a new skill set. And that was a massive part of that is that you can't get caught up. Like, you've got your business goals. If you want to build a business with all your mates and you all do it together, then you're gonna have to go as slow as the weakest person. Yeah. But if you sit there and go, you know what, I love you, I respect you, but we're going to the moon, and unfortunately you can't get us there. Now, we've got a role for you in the business, or we want to help you go and get another job somewhere else. And I do that a lot with people. I'm like, are you up to getting us to this level? And I let them come to the realization themselves. And a lot of times they either say, yep, I want to do it. Tell me what books I need to read. I need to study. I need to do this.
Right.
Or sometimes they go, you know what, I might have to move on. And then we just keep them employed until they find a job. And in a lot of cases, they find a job that they're getting either paid more, they've worked at MouldMen, or they're going to another business that's similar to ours, or they're able to go to a smaller business and then help them get to say 8.
Yeah.
But that's something that I had to learn really, really the hard way, because I had this vision that I'd be able to keep, that we're going to be doing this forever. Yeah. But the reality is my name's on the door.
Mm-hmm. People need to evolve, I guess, right? With the business, the growing thing as well.
And that's growing pains. A lot of people don't have that thirst for knowledge, and they don't have that desire. They want to knock off at 5 o'clock and move on.
It requires leadership from your side. As a leader grows, initially it's hard for them to tell open communication, right? It's hard to tell them, hey man, by the way, you're not ready for that. But when the leader grows and the business grows, we have to grow as a leader and tell them, hey mate, this is the you got to grow here, or if not, you're going to be left behind, sort of thing. Yeah. Sometimes it's the open communication.
Well, but it's very hard in Australia to move anybody on. You either have to make them redundant, you have to put them through some terrible performance management, which is terrible for everybody and their mental health, or you have an open conversation where you say, I feel like there is a better role for you somewhere else, where you can potentially learn some more and go on. And that's the thing is, we've had people that have left, they've got more money, or they've given us, they've got a new opportunity, or they're going to work with, maybe a much better CEO or a much better marketer, or they're going to go work with somebody that can teach them. And those people are going off onto that. And I don't feel anything but joy for them and gratitude for what they did for the business. And I want them to go out there and achieve other things. But because most businesses are a bit of like a lily pad. They're a stopgap for something else. Yes. And as long as people come and they work their hardest and they learn something and they grow, and then they can move on to the next stage of their life. So I'm still going to be here. And that's the deal. At the end of the day, my name's on the door. It's my house on the line. It's my livelihood on the line. I'm not going anywhere. So I've got to make sure that as a whole, the people that are in the business and their families, which can be up to like 500 people, are relying on MouldMen to survive every day. So we've got to make sure that they're looked after. And if they're also being brought down by somebody that can't do their role, then that's not fair on them, because they're working their hardest to do their role at a high level. So
you have a bigger purpose, right? Yeah. That's what matters the most. Gerard, talking about mentors, you just talked about it as well. And you did mention to us you were being mentored by Jerry Harvey, the founder of Harvey Norman. Yeah. Tell us a bit about it. What was your experience, and how do founders or people like our audience who are trying to scale get really good mentors?
So, like, Young Entrepreneurs Organisation, or EO, is an amazing part of my journey, and I've been in EO now since I was 19, and we're now I'm one of the youngest, I'm the youngest, longest serving member in EO. And, I think by the time I'm 40, I would have been in there 20 years. Mm-hmm. And with that comes an amazing group of mentors, just by picking up the phone and looking at the Refidex of the list of the other entrepreneurs around the world. So first and foremost, it's about asking the question. So with Jerry, it was just, I met him at the races, and I went up and I shook his hand and I asked him, and he said yes. And then he gave me his assistant's number, and I called her on the Monday and she booked it in, and then we did it for about a year of me going down to Sydney, or he was come up for the races to the Gold Coast. And usually I would just walk into his office and he'd tell me to sit down, and I'd just observe for the day. But he was the one that taught me that lesson about, people get on the business they join the business, they get on the boat, they get on the train, they get on the car, whatever you want to call it, and they move you as far as they can move you. And then you either have to give them another role in the business if they can't do that role anymore, or you need to encourage them to find another role. And they may go, like I said, they might join you at 2 and get you to 8, and then they need to go back to, say, find a 4 company they can then go to 12. Because they're not going to be able to get you to 16 or 32 or whatever it is. So he was the one that taught me that lesson. The other thing is and he was the one that also said, Gerard, my name's on the door, his name's on the door, obviously Harvey Norman. And he said, and I've been here since we started the company. No one else has. Yeah. His business partner had passed away. So he was the only one left. So he knows what it feels like to employ thousands of people, and they come and go, and they have, and he was the one that taught me that don't get caught up in the nostalgia and this feeling that we're going to grow this company together and we're all going to do it together and it's all going to be amazing. It's not a reality, and it's not a reality in a lot of businesses, but it could be. It could be in some, but not in mine. The other thing is that I've reached out to so many people over the years, and I just send them a letter. And I sent Phil Knight from Nike a letter. I didn't send an email or tweet him or whatever. I actually sent a handwritten letter, and that sort of came back. And then we went back and forth a few times. He was very generous with his time. But for anybody that says I want a mentor, you just got to ask. And the trick is actually these days is to send a letter, because they don't get letters anymore. They're either going to get a tax bill or another bill that comes, or some sort of bank statement. But the only other letter they're going to get is going to be a letter that they're going to go, oh, what's this? This looks interesting. I might open that. And then before you know it, they open it, and there's a letter from you asking, hey, can I get 15 minutes of your time? Here's my number. Please give me a call. And who knows, you might just end up like I did, get a phone call or get a message back from Phil Knight. And
so amazing.
Yeah.
That's very inspiring,
That's
man.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Great conversation so far, but I just want to change gears a little bit and go for. So we heard about IT businesses and website businesses changing into AI.
Yeah.
But how the bloody hell does a MouldMen, like a mold business, go into AI? And it's amazing what you're doing with that. So do you want to just share a little bit about what are you doing in that space?
Look, everyone's talked about being an IT company for many years. They're like, oh, we're all IT companies because everything we run now is all cloud-based solutions, that subscriptions and all these other things. So you've got to have an understanding, obviously, of technology, because it's how it's running our business. You can't really run your business like without Xero or QuickBooks or MYOB, if anybody still uses that. But people businesses have evolved, and we're at a point now where this feels like, to me, what it must have felt like when the combustion engine was created, or when the internet. The AI change that's coming now is as big as that. And I'm sure there are people back in the day that were still trying to make buggies for horses and all the rest of it. And that's what you're seeing in businesses at the moment, who are going, I might use AI in a couple of years when it sorts itself out. And I'm like, it's not cryptocurrency. It's not going to go up and down. This is the way of the future. So everybody needs to start thinking like that they're an IT business. And you've got to develop a culture around how do we improve things with technology. I can tell you in 2022, I tried to grow the business with people, and being a service business, it becomes extremely expensive. I wasn't selling a product, I was selling a service. So that means I've got people, which means with people comes problems. It also comes, super, payroll tax, all these other great things that follow you. It's not, and there's no obviously GST, so you can't claim back. So it's not like you're selling a product and you can buy more product, just put a bigger order in and we'll sell more next month. I had to grow with people, and I just kept throwing people at the problem. And until we went through all of that growth and got to the end of it, I was like, wow, we've got so many people here, and it's a really, really expensive exercise. We've now know that this is the size of business that we can maintain and that the market can maintain, but we need to work out how we can do this more efficient and better. And the only way to truly do that is through technology. Then OpenAI released ChatGPT, and my world just was like, okay, this is the game changer, because for a long time, AI was only reserved for the companies that were 100 million plus. They were the ones that were building neural networks, and they were the ones building all these things that we just couldn't touch as a normal business, or even knew what a neural network was. Like, I didn't know what a neural network was 12 months ago. So a lot of companies who used to build websites who go, hey, I can build you a bot, because they're going onto ChatGPT, they're making it, and then they're selling it, and it may or may not work. They might know how to use Zapier better than the next person. But what we're building now, and what I'm seeing a lot, is that people are building Frankenstein businesses. They're building Frankenstein businesses with that many different plugins that nobody knows what's actually running the business. Is Xero the master of our CRM and where everything goes through? Who's Like, have we got our CRM? Is it over here with HubSpot or Zoho or Salesforce? But then we've also got a job operating system, which is your job management system. Then you might have a ticket system for your telephone system, and you go over here and you're looking at all these subscriptions, and going back to what I said before, it's like buying a cow but wanting a steak.
Yes.
And all these companies are building these amazing pieces of kit, and you need one or two things in it. And so what we've done this year is worked out what are some of the big holdups in our business. Where are the funnels? Where are the bottlenecks? And what can we do to resolve them? So we did go out to a few companies who said, yeah, we're an AI company, and we looked back at their website and they were a website company or building something else before, or doing Microsoft, or and those didn't work. Unfortunately, what my vision and what I wanted to build really was a lot bigger than what we were going to be able to get from just an off-the-shelf sort of solution. So we looked at our whole process and realized that we can build different pieces of AI without having to go and buy the whole cow or buy the whole HubSpot or buy this. And the only way to do that was to build our own neural network. So we have designed a neural network with an outsourced company to build, to link all of our major apps through this neural network. So that then runs the whole business. And that my team that are in the office that have been managing jobs and the input of data are going to be able to then look after the customer. I want to over-service the customer and use AI as the tool that gets rid of all of that clunky, boring, slow stuff that just holds a business up. And for instance, like one of our busiest weeks ever, we had 6,000 work orders come through in 1 week. Now, we used to have to put them in manually. And the record to get a job into our system was about 8 minutes, 7 or 8 minutes from when the email comes through to get it into the system. And I can tell you, when you watch that person do that job, because there's a lot that goes into questions, answers, all these sorts of things, it's a big job to get it in. So you do that 6,000 times and you realize you need a lot of people to be able to do that. Fast forward to where we are today, and the meeting that I had before here, that I came here today, was the company that's building our AI at the moment has been able to build a piece of technology that reads every single one of our emails, deciphers what is needed, and then is able to get it straight into SimPro within 1 minute. So every minute it's checking for new emails coming into our system and then putting it straight into our job management system without a human being able to touch it. And it can decipher if is it a question, is it anything else? And by having a neural network that is ours, we're also now able to put in the hundreds of thousands of emails that we have, the hundreds of thousands of quotes and jobs that we've done. We can put in interviews, we can put in, we can do questions and answer with me, like, how did you start the business, Gerard? And I can then just speak to it, and it will then learn it. So when somebody goes onto the website, or I have to write a press release about, well, you need an intro, you can just go, please write me an intro for a podcast that I'm doing based on MouldMen and our story. Hit it, and our neural network, like a ChatGPT, will be able to do that for us. So that goes live. Yeah. We're in testing phase. In the next couple of days, it'll go. We're testing it in a Sandlot, and then by May it'll be up and running. So, what I'm encouraging people to deal with, to look at now, is look at your whole process. Look at every keystroke that your team are making, and work out if it's repetitive, how can you replace it? But make sure that you're dealing with the right company, because if you're not dealing with the right person with the right expertise, then you could be going down a very expensive path of dealing with these plugins that you just don't want to be dealing with. So, everybody, like in this day and age, needs to, if you're an entrepreneur, you need to be spending a few hours a day on AI, what's happening, what are the changes, and start to educate yourself about it, because even a mold business is going to be more of a tech company in the next 12 months than it is going to be a mold removal company, because instead of when you contact MouldMen, that whole funnel process of getting into the system is going to take seconds and not minutes. Wow. The next thing that we're building is is around scheduling. So how do we optimize scheduling with all of this other stuff so that we can give people options? The next phase after that is going to be obviously to remove mold. Now, to remove mold, I need people in vans out there, but if that's the only bottleneck that I have, I can scale that because it's vans and people and training.
Yes.
But when it comes time to looking at, if we get 6,000 jobs today and how do we get them into the system, that sort of gives you a backlog, and you don't really know what your pipeline is. You can think about it, but by the time you get all those jobs into the system, if you do it manually, those people have already gone and got another 3 quotes from someone else.
I really like how you change the perception. Even though we are a mold company, very quickly we need to look at as an IT company. In the next 12 months, that's just amazing.
Well, innovation comes from culture, and it comes from developing a process that enables you to have innovation as part of your weekly routine. If you're constantly, we don't do that, that's how we used to do it, like that'll kill your business overnight. And that's what's happening. People are coming into the office like, hey, we can build this thing and it can plug in. It's like, great, plug it in. And you're like I said, you'll just end up with a Frankenstein of a business because you've got all these plugins that you don't need, and you'll be death by subscription because you'll be paying tens of thousands of dollars for all this technology that you don't really need. So I talk to IT companies like every week at the moment, and I'm saying you need to work out how you can be a butcher shop and not sell the cow. And so when somebody walks in and they go, well, we've got all this product, you should be able to break it down. So when somebody wants a tech service, or they want a simple CRM, or they want a call system, or you don't have to buy the whole thing. You can just buy what you need. And I think that's going to be a huge industry in the future, is white labeling, the best bits of HubSpot and the best bits of all this and the best bits of that. And then have you walk in and go, well, I'll have that off the shelf, that off the shelf, and that off the shelf. It's not as expensive as what you would be having to buy 4 or 5 other companies, but really what you're able to do is just have what you need and stay really, really lean.
It's awesome. Yeah. Love that.
Really big, Gerard. I mean, we would love to keep continuing our conversations. All right, it's been amazing. Just another quick one.
Yeah.
If you had to start from scratch, all right, is there anything that you would do differently?
No. My lessons are, they've taught me everything, and they've made me who I am. And I've failed so much, and I've done so much wrong, and I've also done a lot of good as well. But I am who I am because of the experiences that I've had. And if I was to start all over again, I wouldn't know what I think I'd still be in the same position. I'd still be approaching everything the same way and waiting for those lessons to turn up. It's just the coolest thing about getting older the harder you work and the more you work is the more lessons you get. The more times you're in the gym, or the gym of life, or you're learning, you're constantly getting better, and I'm really focused on that. And I really love the fact that I could have done so much differently, and there's so many things I could have changed, but I wouldn't be sitting here with you right now if I'd invested in Facebook in 2004, or if I'd invested in Twitter, or if I'd done all of these different things that I could have done if I could have, should have, would have. But I am who I am, and the lessons that I've been able to learn have been able to get me to where I am. And I'm really excited about the future, and I'm really excited about the opportunities that have now been presented to me. Again, learning the lessons, trying not to get too ahead of myself, trying to stay away from those shiny balls, trying to have that feedback loop of my failures and my lessons, making sure that I'm constantly learning, taking ownership when I fail, and being that leader that owns the fact that they get it wrong, and move forward with the lessons and go, okay, we're a better person, because none of us are the same as what we were this morning. Yeah. You've learnt something today. You might have heard something. You've read a book. You're not the same person. You may look the same. Somebody might say, yeah, I know Darshan. He's a good guy. I met him 2 years ago. Darshan is not the same Darshan that they met 2 years ago. You're a different person, and that's why I would never go back, because
I love that mindset.
I think that you can. I heard this once. It's like the windshield is bigger than the rearview mirror, and that's for a reason. Like you just keep powering forward. If you make a mistake, we've all done it in the car. We put our hand out the window. Sorry, and you keep moving forward. That's how I see it, and I love every time I see you, you've learnt something. You're doing something more. Your business is growing. You've now building a podcast. Like, you're not the same person, and that's really exciting. And I think it's exciting for everyone that's listening to this, is that you're not the sum of all your mistakes. You're not the sum of all your failures. You're not the sum of all your successes. You are who you are, and if your intention is to continue to go forward and continue to learn and be a good human, then stick on that. Don't worry about everything that's gone behind you and all that is behind you. Learn from it, move forward, and put a smile on your face.
Amazing. Gerard, it's been so good speaking with you. And we can see that you're scaling so fast, so quickly. Tell us a bit, where can people find more about you and what you do?
You can find MouldMen at mouldmen.com. That's our mold removal business. If you need to get in touch with me, you can do that through gerardmurtagh.com, or just go to social media or whatnot. I'm sure it's not too hard to find people these days. So more than happy for people to reach out. I learned just as much from you as I'm sure you learnt from me during our time of mentoring. So I really enjoy that part of this of the journey, is like being able to share the experiences. And like I said earlier on, like I'm in the weeds of this. I'm still a student of the game. I haven't had that 9-figure exit yet. I really
coming soon.
Look, I sometimes I'm so sort of dedicated to the craft of it all. Like, it'd be nice to be able to achieve some of those things, but I'm also really happy with the lessons that I'm learning now, and I wouldn't have had those lessons of those tough times if it had been all sort of rosy and successful. So I'm actually really happy with where I'm at right now.
Thanks so much, Gerard. It's been a pleasure, and it's been an epic podcast having you here.
Thank you for having me.
Cheers, mate.
Thanks for listening to Scale Your Empire. Help spread the wisdom by liking and sharing this podcast. And we'd love to hear your views in the comments. Now, go out there, take action, and elevate your empire.